just alongside of it. Today we're going to be looking at an overview of cloud identity, and we'll be discussing what that means for your business. So we'll look at what the problem in the infrastructure is currently and what the problem that Google Cloud Identity is trying to solve. And we'll talk about how you can implement this within your organization and take advantages of some of these amazing features. So when we look at cloud identity, what we're going to be talking mainly about is, of course, the features. We'll touch a bit about what's new in the product, and of course, what's on the roadmap to understand what the main goal and vision for cloud identity is from Google. Of course, at the end, we will have a question and answers period, and that will be it for the presentation. So starting off, we're going to start off with the cloud identity overview, as I mentioned, and I want you to understand that this is a new type of security model that we foresee a lot of businesses adopting. So we're going to talk about, again, what the problem is currently, what we're seeing in the space, and how we think Sweetbriar can help you to integrate cloud identity. So the workplace is transforming. User expectations have changed with mobile devices. Core productivity apps and data are in the cloud, and enterprises want a connected and collaborative workplace. So if you remember, working in an office about 20 years ago, most of the work was done behind a firewall on your office machine, and it was rare that you would want to access that data from a mobile device just because they weren't powerful, and you wouldn't really need to access data from outside the office. Even if you wanted to, because of that firewall perimeter that was around your office, you would have to go through quite a few hoops just to get access to your data from outside the office. Let's say you're a traveling worker, or if you're just a regular office worker and is at home and needs to access some data last minute, you'd have to go through at least a VPN to access it, which can be very cumbersome. So because we're seeing that this is a new area of a need for G Suite, Google has created cloud identity. You can see that in the list here, it says by 2021, more than 50% of enterprises will adopt an all-in cloud strategy. And along with that cloud strategy is you're going to need to have good management, identification management that is, and adopt a new security model that we'll talk about today. So the perimeter has disappeared. We talked a bit about what the perimeter looked like previously. You were behind firewalls, you had to access your data through VPN, and at this point within the space, we're seeing that businesses are no longer restricting access to applications and data to just their employees. They're needing to share access to customers, vendors, and partners. And so where this comes into play is removing that perimeter, that firewall around your office data, and taking into account the person, the device they're using, and the context that they're trying to use to access the data. That's the new security model. It's moving away from access controls from the network and moving them towards access controls based on the person, the device, and of course the context that they're using to access the data. So this is the new security model that Google has been working on. They had a need for their employees to be able to access data from outside on untrusted networks without using a VPN. And so this is where this started. So what they found was existing approaches were built for on-premise environments, and most of them were built to have that firewall, that perimeter around the data. Again, moving away from this really allows you to have much more access from any device. You don't have to deal with cumbersome VPNs, and of course, authentication is much easier, especially with the new two-step verification features that are available within Google. So seeing all these existing approaches were built for on-premise environments, Google has strategized to make their own new security model. And that's where cloud identity comes into play. So let's talk a bit about how Google envisioned cloud identity to work better. So Google envisioned Beyond Corp as a new security model. That's basically the name of the security model that they envisioned. You might see that within their documentation. And it was envisioned in 2011. Some thoughts around that, again, were to give the ability for their employees to access data from untrusted networks without the need for a VPN. So it adopts the methodology of trusting no network. Every request to applications or data must be encrypted, authenticated, and authorized. And Google even has every application and API on the internet. And I'm sure most of you as well. So one last thing is just to keep in mind that even Google search code is on the internet. So everything has been moved to the cloud, and that's how cloud identity comes into play to be able to securely allow this sort of access. So as I mentioned before, this is shifting access controls from the network perimeter to individual users and devices. Excuse me. So what does that look like? So this is basically a nice breakout of what cloud identity looks like and where it comes into play. So there's a lot of key features here. Envision this for your organization. You currently have an LDAP or an Active Directory implementation, and that can easily be synchronized with cloud identity. Behind cloud identity is the way it manages those access controls. So it takes users, devices, and applications and makes them first-class citizens into cloud identity. All this access to data is protected by context-aware policies and allows you to interact with the directory that's already built in if you're using G Suite. So it's one single pane of view to manage your users that, again, may not be employees, that may be vendors, customers. You're actually able to manage all those employees and other people within cloud identity, that single pane of view. So you'll be able to control what applications each of your users has. In some cases, they may not need a G Suite account. You might actually have vendors that only need access to specific third-party applications that support SAML authentication. And that's where cloud identity comes in. You can create those users within cloud identity, turn off services like G Suite, and still allow them to access those third-party applications. And again, as you can see here under devices, it also covers mobile and desktop devices. So you can actually create policies based on mobile devices to control access to those third-party applications with cloud identity. So it's really giving you the power of all the authentication, machine learning, and AI that's already built into G Suite and pushing that forward into a more robust SSO solution. Cloud identity, again, can be synchronized with your LDAP. So if you already have an existing directory, you're welcome to synchronize that over to cloud identity and then plug in the applications you'd like to make it work with. So as I mentioned previously on this slide here, it really breaks out into users, devices, and applications. So for the next couple of slides, we're going to break them out. We're going to start with users or people and talk about the benefits and features that are available to you within cloud identity for users. We'll then move on to devices, and then we'll move on to applications, of course. So let's start off with people management. One of the great features of using people management, or the features of cloud identity that allow you to manage your people, I should say, is that you can automatically provision your users straight into Google's cloud directory. And what that means is any third-party applications that you have plugged into cloud identity can also be used for automatic provisioning. Now, there's a large catalog of applications that are already set up to support automatic provisioning. And I've included a slide here just to give you quick access to the list of applications that are pre-configured to support user provisioning. So there's a huge list here. And one of the recommendations that I would make to you is, if you're interested in cloud identity, is to catalog the list of SaaS applications that you're currently using and go through these lists to understand exactly if cloud identity can work for you with user provisioning. That's something that Sweetbriar can definitely help with. If you're interested, we can definitely come and help you catalog your SaaS applications and then give you recommendations based on what can be done with cloud identity. For the most part, you'll be able to manage user provisioning within all those applications and, of course, manage your G Suite all from the same place. From SAML applications with cloud identities, this is another list of pre-integrated applications. So this is a larger list of applications that may not handle provisioning, but can actually handle the login process of secure SSO. So this slide is mainly here for you to click on if you need to access a list of applications. Again, we can help you catalog those applications out and make recommendations on how to integrate them with cloud identity. Now, cloud identity supports any application that supports SAML and OIDC. So if you don't see it in this list, it doesn't mean it's not possible. It'll just take some other custom steps that you'll need to work with. So one of the takeaways here is, if you read on the left-hand side, every day Google observes and stops over 1 million account takeover attempts where the attacker knows the correct password. So a great key benefit to integrating with cloud identity is you already have most of these features available to you for your G Suite applications, but that's just one area that could be breached, right? Tying this all into cloud identity, again, brings all of the machine learning and AI security to all those applications. Once you have cloud identity being your single pane of view, your main source of truth for logins to these applications, that means that all the benefits and machine learning of Google will be tagged onto that. So Google and Sweetbriar strongly recommend that you enforce two-step verification across the board And it makes it very easy using push notifications, one-time passwords, password alerts, and then of course for your high-value users, you definitely want to be using phishing-resistant security keys based on the FIDO standard. So again, keep in mind that if you start to evaluate cloud identity, one of the key benefits is being behind this great security wall that Google has created. It's not a stagnant wall, it's an elastic wall that takes into account the user, the device, and the context of their request for access control. And that'll tie around all of the applications that you start to plug in cloud identity. So Titan security keys were recently released from Google. They're currently available in the US, and although you can use other types of security keys, Google heard from customers that they were having problems sourcing and rolling out security keys. So last July, Google basically created their own Titan security key with a FIDO security key standard, and it includes firmware that's developed by Google itself. So these are available within the Google Store and Google Cloud Reps through Sweetbriar as well for the US area, and is coming to more regions very soon. Again, we definitely recommend having these for your high-value users, such as your cloud admins, Google Cloud admins. Another key benefit of using cloud identity is you'll get these proactive and reactive features that are now available to you within the Security Center. So it's broken down into 3 separate areas, and we'll quickly touch on each of them. So from a security health perspective, there is an area that you can actually log into the Security Center, and that will help you understand if you're within the best practices of Google. So for things like device management, if you're using the G Suite applications, you'll have a list of settings of your current state, and then you'll also have what the Google best practice is. You'll also have a recommendation if there's a change that needs to be made, and resources that you can click on to actually understand why that change is necessary. So if you want to keep a great security infrastructure up and keep it up with all the Google changes, the security health area is going to be a great place where your admins can go to and see at a high level view where they currently stand with their settings and match them up against Google's best practices. The security dashboard, is a great way to get a high level view of the current state of the data within your G Suite and other application interface, right? So now if you're plugging in other applications, you'll be able to still see the login activity of those users and drill down deeper into what's happening. So as an example, in some cases, you might be able to find out that there's a phishing attack or something else like that going on by going through the dashboard and seeing the increase in phishing filtering that's occurring on your network, right? So you might see that normally there's 10 emails a month that are marked as phishing, and then all of a sudden when you wake up in the morning, your admins log into the dashboard, they see that there's 300 phishing attacks that have phishing emails that have been blocked. At that point, you'll be able to understand that something's happening with your email and there's probably a phishing attempt occurring, and you'll be able to take action on that, either by taking actions with your change management and sending out communications, or by using the security investigation tool, which is the 3rd feature here. So this is where reactive measures can be taken from within the G Suite control panel. So you can look at specific device events. If a mobile device has had the wrong password entered multiple times, you can go ahead and pull up a report of which devices have been affected by that, and then either lock them out, block them, or reach out to the users. In the case of a phishing attack, if you know that an email has been sent out and has gotten through to specific people's inboxes, in the past, you'd have to basically work with those users, you'd have to communicate emails to them, maybe run down to their desk and ensure that they don't actually click on those emails. With the investigation tool, you actually now have access to take action on that email or take action on that mobile device directly from here without having to interact with the user. So you can be a lot more faster with your resolution for reactive measures. So 3 key features that are added to the people management within cloud identity. Okay, So now with devices, we're going to break it down, right? So we talked about people, devices is the next step, and let's talk about how cloud identity can help manage devices. So device management is a big part of G Suite, and of course, if you adopt cloud identity, this will tie on with those other third-party applications. So it already has a very simple way of setting it up. It's pretty much a one-click setup across iOS and Android devices to get device management spun up. And then you have granular policies that you can place on devices You can enforce lock screens, passwords. You can even wipe corporate data directly on those devices. And again, if you plug in those third-party applications using Cloud Identity, you now have access to those devices the same way you would if they were users of G Suite. So they can be users of G Suite and third-party applications, or they can be just third-party application users that you tie into Cloud Identity and are able to manage their mobile devices. So huge benefit there for vendors, partners, anyone else that needs access to certain areas of your application library. You can all manage that through Cloud Identity. In the middle here, we also mentioned that Chrome browser management is also across apps, sites, and extensions. So you can also enforce Chrome policies for the browser as well, using the mobile device management or just device management features available to you within Cloud Identity. So a key important thing is being able to enforce those policies and control access to those services from multiple places. And that's why laptops, mobile devices, and Chrome OS devices are all listed here. So another key feature that was recently added to Cloud Identity is the ability to manage Drive file stream. So if you have endpoint management turned on and you have devices such as MacBooks and PC devices appearing in your devices area for device management, you can then inventory Drive file stream installations, and you can either block those devices or understand exactly how much usage is happening. So since Drive file stream is downloading data outside your organization, this is a very key feature to being able to do this with Cloud Identity. Desktop management is on the roadmap, so it's coming up. You'll be able to do a lot more things with those devices that are reported to G Suite or to your Cloud Identity admin panel. So you'll be able to see currently what devices are synchronizing with your data, but in the future they'll be adding a lot more controls to actually take action on those devices and build reports. So that's on the roadmap, a key feature that will be added to Cloud Identity. All right, so that was devices. Now moving on to applications, we're going to talk about how you can, the different mechanisms that you have to plug in applications to Cloud Identity. Remember, Cloud Identity is going to be a single sign-on solution where your users will be able to log into their Google account or their G Suite account, and they'll be able to access multiple applications and, of course, their G Suite if you have that turned on. But again, this is not limited to only G Suite users. You can have Cloud Identity for people that don't have G Suite accounts and need access to other third-party applications that are plugged into Cloud Identity. So from an application perspective, there's more than 5,000 apps available under catalog management. So that's basically all the applications that will support auto user provisioning and deprovisioning, and also are pre-configured, meaning there's very few steps to take to actually plug them into Cloud Identity. So on the right, you can see some of the applications here like Slack, Zendesk, SAP, Workday, very common solutions that a lot of businesses are using, can be easily plugged into Cloud Identity and have Google be the main source of truth for your ID management. Password vaulted apps is also coming. It's on the roadmap. Basically, Google purchased Bitium a while ago and are adopting that technology into Cloud Identity. So for applications that you want to, like SaaS applications that don't support SAML and OIDC, if they don't support those, normally you can't use them with a single sign-on solution. But now with password vaulted apps, once that's created or I guess added to Cloud Identity, you'll be able to add these applications without needing them to support SAML and OIDC, and still have your users be able to log into their G Suite account and access those other applications without any other login required. So secure LDAP was a very big key feature added to Cloud Identity. It's basically LDAP as a service, and it allows you to manage access to SaaS applications and traditional LDAP-based infrastructure. So that means that if you have applications that are not SaaS, software as a service, and are currently on-premise, Google wants to be able to meet you where you are, right? So they understand that moving to the cloud is not a one-shot process. Oftentimes it's years or a couple of projects that it takes to actually get all of your applications moved over. And Google doesn't want to discourage you from using Cloud Identity if you still have other applications that are still using LDAP to authenticate. And so what they've created is Secure LDAP, which actually allows you to plug in and handle authentication and authorization for legacy applications, right? So if you have things like Atlassian Jira, if you have VPNs or proxies that require logins using an LDAP, you can plug those into the cloud directory using cloud identity, and still be able to manage those accounts and manage those applications straight from cloud identity. So you still get all the benefits of cloud identity, being able to manage all this from one single pane, even if you have applications that are on-site or on-prem or using LDAP authentication. So as mentioned here, there's no need to create a separate user directory. It supports traditional apps and IT infrastructure that's hosted on-premise, and also infrastructure as a service in the cloud. So that's basically the key takeaway from cloud identity. As you can see, it supports SaaS apps, but also on-premise or cloud-hosted applications that require LDAP authentication. So Secure LDAP was launched last year and came with a couple of launch partners. These are the ones that it was launched with. There have been quite a few additions. So I implore you, if you're thinking of moving to cloud identity, feel free to reach out to Sweetbriar. We're definitely here to help you and guide you through the process. And again, look at that catalog of applications that you currently have and really help you find a roadmap to moving everything over to the cloud, or at least getting onto cloud identity and managing your identity management in the cloud. So here's the summary here. We're going to take a few takeaways from the overall presentation today. So Cloud Identity enables Beyond Corp, which is that Google security model of basically moving access controls from the network and moving them over to the user and the device that they're using to log in. It provides account security for all of those new applications, right? So if you're a G Suite user, you already had some good authentication. You had multi-factor authentication available to you, security keys, machine learning, all that for your G Suite instance. However, for those third-party applications, you had to manage those individually. Taking advantage of cloud identity will allow you to have all that great security built in for all those applications that you tie in to cloud identity. As I mentioned just on the last slide, it enables that hybrid identity. So the ability to use secure LDAP for any LDAP applications you have on site or in hosted applications that require all the LDAP authentication. And then you also can use Google Cloud Directory Sync if you have an LDAP and you want to synchronize those users over to Cloud Identity. It also has that functionality available to it as well. So it's very innovative and forward-looking. It has machine learning and is very context-aware. So again, as Google keeps proceeding with those amazing AI and machine learning tools within the space, you'll be able to take advantage of those if you're on Cloud Identity. So as mentioned, it's included with G Suite Enterprise. So if you're already on G Suite Enterprise, you already have Cloud Identity and all the features that I've mentioned here. If you want to add licenses to that for non-G Suite users, or if you don't have G Suite Enterprise, it can be purchased as a standalone solution at $6 per user per month. And this is where the question period comes in. So does anyone have any questions?